Welcome to Acker Basketball, a father-son podcast on all things NCAA D1 men's college basketball. I'm your host, Curtis D. Acker, joined by my co-host and father, Mark Acker. Dad, thanks for joining again today.
Hey, Curtis, welcome yourself as well. And as always, I'm glad to be here chatting basketball with you and with everybody out there that's listening.
Yes, glad to have you. Let's get right into it. Today's topic is the Chicago State Cougars wrapping up their NCAA season yesterday on Monday, February 19th. And it was a win against Indiana Northwestern, and they ended up sealing off their season with a victory at home. Now let's talk about a little bit, since you are a coach, from the coaching perspective, Dad. Let's put yourself in Gerald Gillion's shoes. What are the successes from this season?
Right. Well, I look at it, number one would be the record, right? Their win-loss record. We've always measured number one on win-loss. So he's gone in his 3 seasons. He's gone from 7 wins his first season, 11 last year, albeit on a slightly shortened schedule, and then on to 12 victories this year for the 12-18 overall record. Their last year as an independent, before moving on to hopefully bigger and better things for them. So certainly a success when you look at just that perspective. Secondly, I think about for Gerald, he's from Florida, came through the ranks as a AAU coach, as a high school coach. And if you look at their roster, it's made up of kids largely from the Florida area. So right. Probably you can measure some success on both recruiting and then the record going along with it from his background, right? I can imagine that's building that homegrown feel to the program. It's got to feel good for him as a coach as well, right? So there's that. And then the third thing is, if you look at a couple of their wins this year, even though they're an independent schedule, they played they played some good teams, and they also came up with a couple big wins this season. Right, so Curtis, what couple of their wins are? They beat knocked Northwestern out on the road. In fact, even right by a point or two, whatever it was. So there was one big win that they had on their shelf. So
yes, Northwestern.
Big notch right there for their success in that game against a Big Ten team.
Yes, absolutely. They ended up beating Northwestern on the road right after it was just 12 days after Northwestern ended up knocking down number 1 seed Purdue, while the Boilermakers were number 1 at that time. So that was a huge win for them. And then we'll get into it a little bit later here, but they ended up beating FDU, who, as we know, last year ended up beating Purdue when they were number 1 seed in March Madness as a 16th seed, and we'll get into more of the significance of that a little later. But Dad, I want to ask you, so you vaguely hinted at it, that they were moving on to bigger and better things. So, and that's part of the reason why the FDU win is so important, is that next year Chicago State is moving into the NEC, the Northeast Conference. Merrimack and Sacred Heart are leaving to go to the MAAC, not the MAC, but the MAC, the bigger MAC. And then the Chicago State Cougars will be joining the NEC starting immediately next year. So what is going on with this program specifically moving into the NEC, and as a school's whole perspective? Can you share a little bit with that with us?
Right, exactly. Well, I'll add too, right, since 2010, the man outside of Gerald Gillion's tenure here in his 3 seasons, the teams combined over those seasons, 62 wins, 263 losses since 2010 in the Chicago State program.
Wow.
Long history of non-success.
Yes,
and,
large history.
And not struggling for a long, long time. It even goes back into the 80s before you'll find a winning record, really. So a long history. Yeah, so what's changing there? 2013, they hired a new athletic director. With a long history of success building programs, building fundraising, adding fundraising, and you're seeing that now in the program that they have a master plan here to really enhance their athletic program. In fact, they're adding this next fall they'll be adding women's triathlon to their programs. And then larger than that, from think about a program perspective, the plan right now in 2025 to start a Division I FCS football program for Chicago State. So big, very large scale plans in front of them there, and they're making progress. So from what I've read about it, they're moving along in the right direction with that goal in mind.
Yeah, and that's big for the football team because the MEAC actually denied Chicago State access into the entry into the MEAC last year because they didn't have a football team and didn't have any plans to create a football team. So that was probably a kick in the behind for Chicago State to get a football team, and now they're right on with that.
Exactly. And back to the basketball program, the men's basketball program. Again, we look at the staff. Gillion is third season. Barrington Terry, another successful high school coach from the Charlotte area, North Carolina area. Jelani Hewitt, a young kid, just finished playing and then starting into coaching as a player development coach. All those have all been there. All three have been together for 3 seasons. This year, they also added Scott Spinelli, a highly sought after assistant coach that came over this season and trying to help build their program as well. So they got a nice foundation of coaches there. Good. So again, hopefully they're building stability, and then can grow into it. It'll be interesting to see where these predominantly high school and new coaches coming into a conference, how well that's going to translate over as they step up. Yeah. So Kurt, what about from a player perspective? Spotlight, Wesley Cardet Jr. Where do you see him? Both this year, how was his season, and where do you see him going forward beyond this season?
Yeah, well, so Wesley Cardet Jr., I'll pull up the graphic for him right now. So he had 18.1 points per game, as you can see there. He actually improved in his points per game 3-point percentage in the 20-plus point games that he had. He only had 9 last year, and it contributed to winning success when he was scoring. Chicago State was winning. So a little bit down as far as free throws go. Other than that, he had a very, very successful season, I felt like. And it's time, I think, for him to make that NBA push. He was a big reason why they ended up beating Northwestern, that game that you referred to earlier. He had 30 points in that game. And then the FDU game, which that was the only time that they played a Northeast Conference opponent this past season. So that win was huge on the road once again, 75-74. And Cardet actually did not play that game. They relied more on a ball spread during that game. 4 players had 10-plus points. Those are Crawford, Neal, Corbett, and Davis. So those are just Cardet was just fantastic. I think he's ready for that NBA level. It seems like he's going to be more of a wing player, and maybe an off-ball guard could end up maybe even playing some small ball 4 or 5, but that's where Cardet, I think, belongs, is to test those NBA draft waters. And if he doesn't get drafted with maybe a late second, he ends up signing a 2-way deal or ends up being in the G League and works his way up to the NBA eventually.
Great.
But yeah, that's my analysis on him. And then I briefly mentioned him, but Jason Corbett, who actually got 25 points in that last game again that Chicago State had this year, he's going to be that guy that if Cardet does end up leaving, Corbett is going to end up taking charge for Chicago State when they play in the NEC next year.
Gotcha. Is their roster made up of a lot of good predominance of younger players, or is it balanced across seniors down to freshmen?
Right. Good question. So luckily they're not losing anyone from graduating, like aging out, even with the COVID eligibility, 1-year eligibility because of COVID. So they're not going to lose anyone from that. Everyone on the team's going to be back unless there are some transfers out. or as we just talked about a little bit earlier, Cardet does end up leaving to go to the NBA, but that's still up in the air. The season just ended for them, obviously. But I made a post today on Instagram with that graphic that I showed a little bit earlier, and Cardet actually put it on his Instagram story, which was pretty cool to see. So maybe that's a little not gonna say anything here like confirming anything, but maybe that's a little sign that he's thinking about the NBA a little bit, because that was the question was, hey, is he finally ready for it? So he's definitely gained a lot of traction as of lately, and I think that would be the only departure that they have, if they do have one, from anyone that at least isn't in the not going to the transfer portal.
Right. Obviously, we don't know that just yet. Time will come with that.
Yes.
See how that gets developed.
That'll come in May, but we're in late February now, so we'll see.
Right. Well, and here's another thing too. Can they? I don't know if you know the answer to this. Just thinking about it, as you mentioned that, can they get a head start here because their season is over? Maybe not in terms of actual commits or anything like that, but now they're focused, rather than focusing on the rest of this regular season, postseason tournaments, NCAA tournament, or other tournaments, right? They're done. They're ready. They should be looking at next season already, so maybe they can get a head start on at least what their scouting aspect of their what's coming for them. So
yeah, you just hit it with the nail on the head. It was exactly what I was going to talk about. Was that scouting team is going to have to start doing some work now, and that's going to be the big advantage that they have over these other teams coming into the next season, is they're starting their off season today, whereas most other teams will be starting their off season late March, or either sometimes in late April or early April that they're starting. So I would say yes, that's a big advantage that they have.
And let's go back to the coaching real quick. Scott Spinelli, as I mentioned earlier, that's one of the things he's known for is recruiting. So, and again, he just started this year in the program. Maybe that was intentional. He worked at Boston College before coming to Chicago State. So, he's got a bigger, name and presence there from that experience. So, we'll see what he can pull off. I bet he's busy. He's going to have a busy year.
Yes. I wonder how many more players from Florida they're going to grab. I think it's 5 players with my research that came from West Oaks Academy in Florida.
Right.
So there's definitely a heavy Florida, emphasis.
Influence.
Yes, influence.
Yeah.
That's how I'd put it. But I think that's a good time to chop the cut here on Accurate Basketball. I want to thank you again for watching. Dad, thank you again for joining. Some great insight there into the coaching mindset of the Chicago State Cougars. And just want to let you know you can follow us on X and Instagram at Acker at bball for more. Really looking forward to hearing from you guys again. Let us know what you think of the new format, the upgraded system that we have. We're using OBS now instead of using Riverside. So let us know what you think. Until next time, we want to thank you, and God bless. Wait, before you go, just wanted to thank you once again for watching. You can follow me on Twitter at Curtis Acker. You can follow me on Instagram under at Curtis_D_Acker. Also subscribe to my other YouTube channel, Curtis D. Acker, all together. Once again, wanted to thank you for watching, and God bless you.